All right, I call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Work, please take the roll.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Ms. Ozzles?
Here.
Mr. Friesen?
Present.
Mr. Koenig?
Here.
Ms. Dickerson? Chair Keeler?
Present. All right, so on the agenda tonight, we have approval of the minutes, approval of findings of fact. We have a chance for a public forum. We have a public hearing for case VAR 2025-004. And then after that, we have staff's choice, attorney's choice, board member's choice, and then we can adjourn. Let's see. This is a little bit different order of things due to the outline of the materials that we received about quasi-judicial hearings. We have authority as the Board of Adjustment and Appeals to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such an appeal may be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. So the procedure for the meeting, I will get to when we get to that case. All right, so first up we have approval of the minutes for August 13th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, next up we have approval of findings of fact for case VAR 2025-006 at 3336 South Marion Street. I need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So next up, we have a public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board regarding items not on the agenda. So not for the case tonight for VAR 2025-004. So commissioners or board members and staff will not engage in a dialogue or answer questions during this time. Speakers may be directed to staff or other sources for responses at a later date to questions raised during the public forum. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Questions and comments may also be emailed to comdev@englewoodco.gov. Do we have anyone here tonight to speak at the open public forum? Is there anyone online?
Nobody online.
Right. So we can move on to the public hearing for case VAR 2025-004. The procedure for the meeting is that the case will be introduced and an overview will be given by staff. The applicant will present their request and the reasons the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Then opponents will also be given a chance to address the board. And then if needed, staff will address the board again. The public hearing for case VAR 2025-004 at 4983 South Fox Street is now open. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow for an 8-foot tall privacy fence to remain in the R1A zone district. This would be a variance to section 16-8-6, table 8-6 of the Englewood Municipal Code. I believe we received verification and posting of the subject property. Was that received by email? Or is it? Do we have that?
Yes.
All right, so we received that by email. Folks have seen that. Staff, could you please come forward for an overview?
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Will Charles, planner 2 of City of Englewood. Yeah. Good evening, commissioners. So this is, as mentioned, for 4983 South Fox Street for an 8-foot tall privacy fence along the rear property line. Just a couple of housekeeping things before I go through the presentation. You should have a couple of documents in front of you. There are a few pictures attached that were submitted originally with the application that were meant to be in the packet originally that mistakenly got left off, as well as 2 response letters provided by the applicant to the staff report, and also a written justification by a neighbor. So those were submitted yesterday. They're attached on the agenda for today, but you also have them in front of you. Just want to make sure you have a chance to look at those as part of the hearing. Alrighty, so with that, so this is a snip from the table regarding fence heights. So as you can see, there is a 6-foot max height in side or rear yards. And then that height is measured at the grade of the fence at that point. So at each point along the fence, you would measure that height up to 6 feet. So, and then additionally, if there's like a retaining wall or something like that, it's measured from the top of that retaining wall to the top of the fence. So this is a photo that was submitted or provided by the applicant, showing that pretty significant grade change from where the house is to the rear of the property. So there's at least a 2-foot grade change from that side of the house to that rear yard fence. This is a topo map of the area. So you can see on the left side, there's the Big Dry Creek, Bellevue Park to the west, and then Bellevue Avenue just to the south. So one little clarification on this one, the green rectangle is actually meant to be one street further over to the east. So it's mistakenly put on South Galpago Street when this property is on South Fox. So it's just one shifted to the right. But the point still stands that this property and these properties all have, as they get closer to Big Dry Creek, the properties all slope downwards. So all these topo lines are 10-foot topo lines. So once you get to about a block or 2 west of this, it gets some very, very significant, drops along individual properties. So for any variances, as you all know, there are the 5 criteria that they are required to meet. So the first being unique physical conditions to the land or the structure. The second is practical difficulties or hardships that are not that the property cannot enjoy that are enjoyed by properties in the vicinity. The next is public health, safety, and welfare. The fourth being permanently impair the use or development of adjacent properties. And then the fifth is that whether this is a self-imposed hardship. So as you saw in the staff report, through staff analysis, staff feels that the first 2 criteria are an issue for this property. The first being that there is a unique physical condition and that the property does slope, but this is something that is in that area as a total. So properties to the west of it all have this sloping condition to them, which is also this issue that staff found with the second criteria, that this is something that is a neighborhood-wide thing, that the properties all slope rather than just this individual property. Additionally, for criteria 4, you'll note that staff has put a condition on or recommended condition on the variance if it was to be approved, which is to verify that rear property line. There's been some dispute between this neighbor and the one to the west about where that property line is. So just having a surveyor get out there and confirm where the property line is would be beneficial for that. So with that, staff is recommending denial of the variance. However, if the board does decide to move forward with approving the variance, staff would like to add the 2 conditions. One being that building permit gets approved, and then also that surveyor. With that, I can answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from the board? Yes.
Yeah, I have one. If you go back to the topo, I didn't quite understand. The site is actually 1 block further east on Fox Street,
Correct.
and this is shown.
Yeah,
I
so the
can't
exact
quite
same
read it.
spot on the street, just 1 block further east.
So that's an area that's quite a bit more level than where it's shown.
This block is kind of where it starts that topo shift down. So I think if you went, one block even further east than that, I don't think there would be, hardly any shift on that. But you can kind of see in the bottom right-hand corner where the high point is, where it's that 5430, closer to Bellevue. So it kind of shifts from there down this way. So it probably is a little bit, the lot to the east is probably a little bit flatter than this, but still similar in the location that it is.
Do you happen to know offhand the lot depth?
The lot depth for this
Yeah.
property?
Correct.
I don't have it offhand, but usually properties in Inglewood are 125 with a 16-foot alley. This one doesn't have an alley, so it would be somewhere in the 135.
So we're looking at 2 foot of fall over, call it 80 feet.
I'll let the applicant kind of
Okay.
talk about their lot dimensions a little more than I can. And I can look it up while I'm gone if we need to.
Appreciate it.
I'm curious, the difference between where a fence height is measured and the fence height or the height of a primary structure, where that gets measured from.
Yeah, so fences are measured at the grade at their location. For a primary structure, we take the 4 corners of the structure, average those out, and that's the average grade for the house or a structure.
Okay,
Same thing for like garages and sheds and things like that too.
thanks. Any more questions? All right, thank you.
I have one.
Oh, you have one more.
So one of the recommendations says that permits will be filed. Is it correct to say that permits have not been filed for this?
There is a permit that is basically under review because of this condition. So there's no way to approve it with an 8-foot height variance or 8-foot shown on the plan. So if the variance was approved tonight after their 30-day appeal period, we would be able to approve that building permit.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Yeah, go ahead.
More confirmation. So with the dispute with the neighbor, it's not known whether or not there was a takings.
Correct. So there's not like a survey with that fence permit. So that's why that condition is on there. That getting a licensed surveyor out there to verify where that property line exactly is. Staff would like that to be a condition on the approval if the board moves forward with it.
Understood. Thank you.
I noticed in the additional materials here as I was thumbing through those, the pictures of the 2 existing fences and basically a 2-foot space in between that can't be maintained by anybody. What's the status? How does Inglewood zoning deal with that?
I don't have a good answer for you. Things like weed removal and things like that would fall under our code enforcement department. I think they would have a tricky time, seeing those issues from the right of way. Likely, a lot of that would fall under a civil dispute between the 2 neighbors. But also, I don't know where that, like I said, I don't know where that property line is, and I'll leave further for the applicant if they want to talk about it.
Does Inglewood not prohibit a double fencing condition?
There's no requirement as far as our fence code.
Right. I don't see any further questions. All right. So next up, the applicant can come forward to testify in this case. All right. Please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
Wilder Wells, 4983 South Fox Street.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Thank
So good evening, Chair, members of the board and community development. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about my request. So I built the fence with the intention of complying with the spirit of the code, providing privacy and safety while respecting neighborhood character. The challenge is that my property has a downward slope of a little more than 2 feet. And so on a level lot, the fence would meet the normal height limit. But because of the grade change that is entirely out of my control, the fence measures taller in certain areas, even though its apparent height when looking west from our house is the same as a standard code compliant. This is a unique site condition, not something that I created. The slope makes strict application of the code a hardship, which has been granted. And that's exactly why this variance process exists, to allow fair treatment where conditions are unusual. So I'd like to emphasize 3 points. First, the intent of the code is preserved. My fence looks and functions the same as any code-compliant fence on flat lots. It doesn't create safety concerns or alter neighborhood character, and the only sight line that is blocked is the one into my neighbor's yard in the back of the house, and hers into mine, which is the normal privilege a privacy fence provides. I would point your attention to the supplied photo taken from the back part of my house that shows the western fence line in question is visually the same height as the other sections of the fence. Number 2, all of the variance criteria has been met. The community development analysis did confirm that all of the individual criterion have been met. The only objection raised was that the hardship applies to other nearby properties as well, but only considers properties further west that are more severely affected. It does not consider the other houses on my block, of which, according to this map, which is false now, you shift it over one more, and every other one is on ground level. So where it's pointing right here, I misinterpreted that line as being the back, but it made sense. If you shift that up, you'll see that there are no other grades. It's not affected there, but there is this 2-foot drop. So on my other houses on my block, all to the, into the east, if you look, are entirely on level ground. So this would not be an issue. So this is clear in the topographic map supplied by the analysis, and I highlighted in the written response materials provided, but as Mr. Charles says, it's not correct as submitted. And then number 3, equal treatment. Without this variance, I'm effectively penalized for having a sloped lot. The variance corrects that iniquity and brings me into line with what other property owners on my block enjoy. This is reasonable and modest request that makes a huge difference in our enjoyment of the property. We have a better view of the mountains instead of having a neighbor's yard and back window in the foreground. It is not fair, nor do I believe is the intent of this board, to say that because there are other properties further west that also suffer this hardship, that everyone must suffer equally, and that no exceptions can be made or considered. I believe in equal treatment, and that where possible, hardship should be mitigated with reasonable accommodations, which this is, and not dismissed unilaterally because others further away also experience it. My property sits on the edge of the entire sloped area, which Mr. Charles has presented, and the slope begins right along the fence line in question. So I'm only asking for the same and equal treatment as other properties that are entirely on level ground. As stated in my written response, I'm happy to verify any requested information by professional survey. In closing, I recognize the staff recommendation and I respect their work. However, I truly believe that this specific situation, granting the variance, supports both the letter and spirit of the code while ensuring fairness. Respectfully ask you to approve my variance request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board for the applicant? Yes, go ahead.
Looking at some of your provided photos, it appears that your abutting condition, that the adjacent fence is already higher. Would you mind explaining how that condition exists?
Pardon, can you restate the question?
On your diagramming where you show what would be the continued slope under the pink line and the green line,
Yeah.
where those discrepancies occur at the far end where there's the greatest difference.
Yeah.
Would you mind explaining why there is that difference in height at that point?
Oh, that's the slope going down. And then so the back fence line is just the 8-foot fence.
Okay, so the 8-foot fence is existing, correct?
The 8-foot fence is the one that's in question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the request is for that to be able to stay. So you can see that there is just a small amount, but that is only because of the natural slope of the land.
Understood. And as I was asking Mr. Charles earlier, would you mind just verifying like general run of your yard, like the length between the back of your structure to the back lot, ballpark even?
80 feet,
Okay.
I would say. Something like that. There is a vacated alley at the end. So that was where essentially, I know there's some questions about like that end property line. So there, yeah, it's, I believe about 8.
Thank you.
In the site plan actually that was presented, there is a measurement. If I believe the site plan was included in the variance, a few of the materials that I had supplied were not included.
Piggybacking on his question a little bit, the way I'm looking at the pictures, it's a fairly gradual slope from your house back to the.
It doesn't feel like that, honestly. It feels like it drops significantly toward the back. So it's like level, and then it starts gradually. So we're like right on the edge of where, as Mr. Charles had said, we're right on the edge of where it starts sloping down. So as far as I can tell, other neighbors do not have this. This is very unique to this.
So your pictures in the second packet today appear to be the north fence. What's the condition like on the south fence?
It's similar, but it's a little bit maybe about, and there should be pictures included as well. I'd say it's about a foot further down on the south fence. But that's just again, it's an uneven back.
So it's not quite level north to south, but it
No,
drops a little bit more south? Or?
I would say that it slopes south as well as west.
And does your fence follow that slope then, the 8-foot fence?
No, it's just the only 8-foot section is just the west.
Yeah, so the west fence, does it slope?
Not too much, but I believe a little bit, just because. But it's it's gradual over that amount of time. But it has to, just based on how the math works out. But it doesn't look that way when you're looking out. It's drastic as the slope from east to west, as it's noted right here. But you can see on the topo lines how there is that gradual sloping for the southwest.
Did you consider other alternatives when you were putting in this fence to handle this condition?
Yes. And I believe I did provide a response. So we did look at potentially doing a retaining wall that would run the entire, like the back fence, and then filling in a lot of dirt that would be able to then build the 6-foot fence on top of that retaining wall. It was significantly more expense. It would have been a lot more disruptive to the neighbors, to the soil. There's also there's a shed back there that would also need to be run out and affected. So this just, and then also just there was a long-term considerations for like erosion and just in general. My understanding is those retaining walls are a little more just safety. They're not as safe as just having the natural erosion.
Mr. Wilder, can you share with us a little bit about before you constructed the fence, what steps did you take with the city in order to, look into permits, apply for permits? Can you just kind of describe to us that process before you actually constructed the fence?
Yeah. This was honestly an oversight on my part. So I had there's the old fence, the way that it was, and I had supplied a lot of just imagery of the growth that happens between the back two. It's totally unchecked. There was a tree that was growing through the back portion of this, just a chain link fence. So I have a small dog, and the dog was like escaping. It was like the kids were it was gross. It was disgusting. So I had the fence company had done some work in my brother's house in Centennial, and they were able to do it. And I realized that it was just a 6 foot. I saw it was a total upgrade. But this is my first house that I've ever owned. Honestly, did not know a lot about it at all. So it's totally my fault, and I know now that would how to get the permit and everything like that. So yeah, that was just really an oversight. We had also looked at the same time of doing a driveway, and we had checked, and there was no permit required for that. It was kind of just all happening around the spring. And again, I was in a kind of a bad state with my dog escaping, and just really wanted to fix it. So that was my fault.
Does anyone else have any additional questions? I had an additional one. You stated in the additional materials that we got tonight that the only sight line is affected is the one from your house into your neighbor's backyard.
Correct.
But isn't the neighbor's view isn't there a sight line on their side of this also affected?
That's what I had mentioned in my opening statements. Is her view back into my house. So it's like this multi-view where she's looking into mine and I can look into hers, and it's just, and honestly, like we've had a couple of issues in the past with, some balls going over there from kids. They had kind of mean dogs that we could not go back there. They would not be, they'd be all torn up, and so it was just. That sight line is really what we're trying to do. So again, it's a privacy fence. We're trying to make it to where it's a little more private back there. So if this was just on level ground, it would only require that 6 foot fence. I also understand that there was a question about the property line, and I did supply. The neighbor came over when we were doing this, and we made sure that the entire fence was built within the existing, actually 3 inches to the inside of the previous fence line. So it's actually shorter distance than there. She makes claim to all of that property of that vacated alley in there, which is totally fine. I just only want her to maintain it. And it's my understanding that the reason for that double fence is that she had some pit bulls that had, and they had bit some of the kids in the previous owners. I was not aware of this history, and so it just didn't dawn on me that there would be 2 fences, honestly, in a vacated alley situation. So I made sure that everything was built inside of the existing fence line, as it's not my intent to expand property. It was only just to provide safety and privacy.
Thank you. Anyone think of any additional questions, or are we good? All right, thank you. Don't think we have any additional questions at this time.
Okay. I did want to say, yes, it was submitted, and that, yeah, the permit. So ready to follow any additional steps. Thank you very much.
All right. I see no other persons present to speak in favor of this request? Are there any persons online?
Nobody online.
Okay. And so I also see that there are no persons present who wish to speak in opposition to this request. We do have the information that was submitted in the packet from the neighbor, from their perspective, as well as the additional response material. Does staff have any additional comments, or does the board have, all right, I see additional questions for staff.
Yeah, I just wanted to so clarify on that fence line from back of property or from back of the house is 75 feet from the back of the house to the back of the fence line. Yeah, I apologize as far as the packet with these pictures and that site plan. It was meant to all be in that written justification attachment, and it appears the files did not upload correctly on that one. So that is my fault. If there's any questions as far as what any of those documents or uploads had on there, I'd be happy to talk about those. But that's it for me, and unless you have any questions.
Good to
The applicant mentioned that he had thought about putting retaining wall. You had mentioned retaining walls earlier as part of the code. I didn't bring my book with me tonight, but if there were a retaining wall, can you then put a 6-foot fence on top of that because you've established a new grade?
Correct. The grade, if there is a retaining wall, the grade is measured from the top of the retaining wall.
Is there anything that would prohibit the applicant from having, say, a vegetable trellis 2 foot back from an existing fence line that happened to be 8 foot tall?
Can you clarify what you mean?
Essentially creating a screening structure using landscape material.
I mean, so as far as, so to be a retaining wall, you need to be retaining that dirt, right? So if there was a structure or something that, it's an interesting question as far as like a vegetable garden. I'm not sure, how we would treat that, but essentially, any sort of like wall holding, the dirt back onto the property would be considered a retaining wall.
Yeah, not necessarily related to the retaining wall question. I apologize. But if through an existing 6-foot fence at the back of lot, would there be anything that would prohibit the applicant from then constructing an 8-foot tall, in this case, trellis being the example, because it would satisfy a screening or privacy desire?
Yeah, I mean, I see. I understand your question. Yeah, I mean, so as far as, if you're doing like a large trellis or like a shed or things like that, those would all generally be considered minor accessory structures. So those can be up to 200 square feet and 12 feet in height. So yeah, I mean, you could do that you couldn't do it for like the whole fence line. You could do it for a portion with a, I guess to get kind of a similar idea with like a screening. But yeah, it'd only be for up to 200 square feet.
Gotcha. Thank you.
One other question would be, I wasn't clear on properties that are further west that have more severe slope. They basically have the same 6-foot requirement no matter what the slope is.
Correct.
Do we know of any exceptions that have been given for that kind of thing by this board over the years?
Yeah, it's challenging to look through all those. With my time with the city, I have not seen any over in this area for fence variances. There certainly could be, but I'm not aware of any.
Any additional questions? The letter from the neighbor mentions complaints about this once it was installed. Was it just one complaint? Do we know how many complaints there were, or?
Yeah, so this came about in the middle of last year from a Q alert. About a complaint about the fence being constructed without a permit. So we investigated and found that there was a fence being built without a permit. So from there, it's been going through this. The same neighbor has, contacted us just because it's taken a bit of time through, just getting it on this variance as well as, going through kind of the permit process to get to the variance point. So it takes a little bit of time. So there were, complaints from that individual neighbor a couple of times, but there weren't any from adjacent neighbors or things like that.
Got it. It was just from one individual.
Correct.
Got it.
I'm gonna go back to the retaining wall question.
Okay.
Can I put a 5-foot retaining wall in the back there and then put a 6-foot fence on it that slopes back to my house?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I think it's pretty obvious that the limiting factor on most retaining walls is cost. The more dirt you have to retain, the gets expensive very quickly. But yeah, there's not a limit on there as far as how tall you want to make the retaining wall. You start doing engineering
So
on it
I could
once you get
change
above
my
3 feet. But
grading at will.
yeah.
I don't see any additional questions. All right, thank you. Does the board have any additional questions for the applicant? All right. I will actually do things a little bit differently tonight. I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing before we do a motion to act. Do I have a motion?
Did you have a chance to talk to you?
No, I mean, as long as we have, unless we have additional questions.
I move to close public testimony.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. All right, so the public hearing is now closed. So we can now have a motion on this variance so that we can begin discussion of this case. Do I have a motion? Can I get a motion on this one?
I move to approve the variance with the conditions outlined by staff.
All right, so this is a motion to for a variance for an 8-foot tall privacy fence to remain in the R1A zone district, which would be a variance to section 16-8-6, table 8-6 of the Englewood Municipal Code. Is that correct? With the additional conditions from staff?
Correct.
And those conditions were, remind me, they were to seek the obtain the building permit.
Property line, yes, survey on the property line, and I'm sorry.
Do we have that in writing, or was it just in the pack in this presentation?
It's just been
Move the
It's-
conditions back up.
It's in the online.
I have the conditions, according to the packet. The conditions were, 1, the applicant shall apply for a building permit for the portions of the fence constructed without a permit. And 2, as part of the permit application, the applicant shall provide a survey or improvement location certificate stamped by a licensed surveyor verifying the location of the fence.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Sure, second.
All right, discussion.
I don't necessarily see this as a hardship on the property. It's less than 3% slope over the yard. That's still ADA accessible. Like, there's nothing extreme about that. And it, to me, reads still as self-imposed just because process was not undertaken for a standard fence permit. So a lot of this would have been daylit through that.
Yeah, I think I'm struggling with the unique conditions as well, just because there are lots of lots that have some that level of grade change or more that
I get so I go back to so I read through all these materials, including the letters last week. I reread through them this morning, and I think what I keep going back to is, Mr. Wilder's statement on, in my opinion, this blanket approach is unjust and contrary to the intent of the variance process, which is to individually evaluate cases. And I could not agree more. I completely hear, city staff on that this is not the only property that is experiencing this same situation, but in my opinion, that means that anybody else that came forward to ask for such variance should also be granted one. It also seems to me that I do also very much wish that Mr. Wilder had applied for this permit beforehand, and to your point, had gone through this process previously. I also understand from a property owner perspective of if you don't know, he's now trying to do the right thing. It does seem that he has taken all of the steps to work with the neighbors. He has taken the steps to work with the city. He is willing to even lose property line in order to have that and to have that survey done. So I hear it, I understand it, but I do very much go back to, this does seem to be contrary to the intent of not only this variance request, but to variance requests. I mean, that would be contrary to it, in my opinion.
Well, I genuinely agree with most of the points. One that still stands apart is that the neighbor that is immediately also experiencing this new fencing condition has expressed, shall we say, less than happy thoughts about this condition, and they are equally entitled to, that fencing condition. So by granting one variance in this case, we're also taking away from that neighbor's enjoyment of their own property, however they choose to perceive it.
Yeah, I do. Again, I hear what you're saying. I don't I don't personally believe that enjoyment of your property is taken away from having 2 more feet less view to the eastern side of your property. I don't, and especially when you're gaining access to it. If this was creating a safety issue for that neighbor, I would certainly understand that, but this does not seem to be creating any safety issues for that neighbor. So I hear you and completely agree that neighbor should also not be undergoing hardship, but it does seem to me that this applicant has taken the steps that they're supposed to take when mistakes have been made, and they're not necessarily attempting to cause hardship to anyone, and I don't believe are causing hardship to anyone.
I think part of the process, though, that would verify that there's not necessarily a safety constraint would be, are you required to do some kind of engineered drawing for your fencing footing condition on a fence submittal? Do we know that can handle a wind load of basically 25% extra or 33% extra height? There's just a lot that was not resolved that would normally have gone through a normal process. Then that gives me a lot of reservation around being able to grant a variance of this nature.
Yeah, for sure. I guess too, though, to go back to the intent of variance, because if we were to follow things exactly to code, we would the applicant's response to that genuinely could be to establish a retaining wall that is 100% going to be less safe over time. So what we essentially have is a rule and a stipulation that is pushing residents to do the thing that is actually likely less safe. So my thought is, let's follow the recommendations of getting surveys. If we want to put an additional requirement on a safety assessment of the height of the fence, or I definitely think we should be open to looking at additional things like that. But the alternative that is allowed in code, a retaining wall, is absolutely less secure for everyone, and would also, anytime that there's an issue with it, would require Mr. Wilder to enter and access his neighbor's property, which he has already given up a couple of feet of. And so I don't think that creates a longstanding safety situation for either of these neighbors, especially if to fix the workaround to make him acceptable via code would actually be less safe. That I think just completely and utterly neglects the intent of why we would grant a variance. And if someone else on that street came to us asking for that, I would make the exact same argument.
I think the issue to me is that the code is very specifically written. It specifically addresses slope. if we do this, we have to do it for several hundred other people. It's a zoning issue that I'm not willing to change the zoning on this. It's something that the zoning department and the city council have to do. It's not really in our purvey to change the code.
Would you describe that slope as slippery, perhaps?
I mean, there are legitimately folks who are benefiting from this slope as well. I mean, it provides great views to the west for a lot of folks. I mean, this is not always a difficulty, a hardship. Yeah, I think I usually don't like bringing up other cases when I'm trying to understand what a unique condition is, but I know that because of each case I want to think of differently, but I think of other fence cases where it was a very different set of conditions that were very unique to, you know, one or two lots. So this would be, if we used this criterion in this way, I mean, is this, I understand the difficulty with how it's written on the page, but with where the height of a building is measured from versus the height of a fence, but it's the code that we're given to, and this would be reworking a lot, too many lots in my mind.
The irony of being able to do a retaining wall and then have a correct fence is very notable.
Illogical, dangerous.
Yeah. On the other hand, I could also build a 4-foot retaining wall and then do a 6-foot fence.
Mhm.
I mean, what's the limit on that? So it's not in our purvey as well.
Sure, and I completely understand that. I do also think that a role of a board that is designed to look at individual cases and grant variances, that the purpose of it is to look at the individual case on what should be varied from that strict code enforcement. And to me, this is just not logical. And if enough people from that neighborhood, those 400 homes, were to come and say, hey, we deserve a variance, then maybe zoning needs to look at that as an issue. And no, that's not necessarily our role to change zoning. Our role is to grant variances in justifiable cases. Zoning can then look at those variances that are being created and make their decisions from there. But
I think that a retaining wall, you would still have to have your immediate footing condition within the property line. If you were to build a 4-foot retaining wall, you're still having to actively give up your property and then build a fence on top. And I think that the intent of that code was written probably to address folks that were further into the floodplain or the natural topographic features in the region that are going to have much more dramatic slope over their yard. That condition is not present. Going to 3% slope on your yard is not atypical at all. So I have a hard time seeing that as a hardship, and I do empathize, if not necessarily with all the reasoning behind the neighbor, of having a now imposed condition that is against code potentially be reinforced with a variance that's not necessarily fair to that neighbor. You're then imposing something that they do not want on their property.
yeah, see, and I would disagree, because it's unless we do the survey, we don't know if it's actually on their property or not.
But there's still a condition of the regardless of where the property line is, which there's still the neighbors looking out at 2 additional feet of fence that they wouldn't otherwise.
And while I may not agree with the neighbor seeing that as a negative condition, it's also not my property and not my ability to make that assessment. I also think that there are alternative means that could be pursued to achieve the desired privacy and screening that would be within code that are not incumbent on like the fence structure carrying all of that design intent. Perhaps this is just something where we're going to disagree too.
Worse things have happened, for sure. Yeah, and I do love vegetable trellises, for sure, but I guess I don't understand how it's different from a fence, so.
I think for me, appreciate board member Ozel's enthusiasm here, and I think I appreciate her arguments, especially on approval criteria 1 through 4. I think for me, it's the 5th criterion, self-imposed difficulty or hardship. The applicant probably would not be going through this process but they self-impose it by not filing the permit ahead of time. So that's where I'm kind of stuck.
I mean, I did appreciate that the applicant put forward an argument for the criterion about the lot, not about the fact that the fence is already in place. So I did appreciate that it did focus on physical conditions about this lot. So I think if we had someone coming in saying, well, you should approve this because I've already built it and it'd be a hardship for me to take this down and redo it, then I would say it's probably self-imposed, but that's not what we've gotten presented tonight. So I did appreciate that part. Do we have any additional discussion, or have we discussed ourselves out?
I'd be ready to vote.
All right. Can we do the vote?
Need to repeat the motion.
Yes. So the motion was, let's see, I've got the conditions in one spot and the rest of the language in another. So the motion is for variance to allow for an 8-foot tall privacy fence to remain in the R1A zone district, which would be a variance to section 16-8-6, table 8-6 of the Englewood Municipal Code. Additional conditions include that the applicant shall apply for a building permit and receive a building permit for the portions of the fence constructed without a permit. And also, as part of that permit application, the applicant shall provide a survey or improvement location certificate stamped by a licensed surveyor verifying the location of the fence.
Mr. Cole,
Nay.
Ms. Bosels,
Yes.
Mr. Friesen,
I vote no. The first criteria that it's a unique physical condition, I don't believe is met the way the code is written. That code is specifically written that the fence shall be 6 feet from the grade. I believe the other conditions are met, but I vote no because of number one.
Mr. Koenig,
I vote no.
Chair Taylor,
I vote no. I'm still struggling with the first criterion that this is a unique physical condition. So I voted no.
motion fails.
All right. Thank you. Next up on the agenda, we have staff's choice. I believe there's a note here about Board Member Collins's resignation. Can you say more?
He submitted a letter of resignation as he's moving away from the city.
Yes. So we are down one member, but we still have enough to make a quorum. Was there anything additional from staff's choice?
I will just tell you all that we plan on bringing an item in the next month or two to discuss short-term rental waivers, as I know there's been some consternation from this group on what you look at and what kind of requirements need to be submitted with them. We want to come back to you all and kind of go over that and find out if there's ways that we can clean that section of the code up.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Attorney's choice.
Nothing other than what Brian just mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything for board members' choice? All right. I think with that, we can stand adjourned. Thank you.